Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. So today we're doing part 3 of Refuting Evolution. And if you remember in the previous episode, we did 2 episodes. We looked at the whole theory of evolution. So we talked in the first part just about Darwinism. We talked about how Darwinism was made up. So this was by Charles Darwin. I mean, it was started off originally by his grandfather. If you want to talk about the founder of it, the true founder of Darwinism, it was his grandfather, Erasmus Darwin, who came up with the theory in the first place. And very interesting, actually, is Erasmus Darwin is actually a Christian, and he actually formed the theory of evolution in a way of saying that this is the way how God had caused things to continue over time and to then evolve kind of over time, and to that was the mechanism of how God had created the world. Well, then obviously we have, after Erasmus, we have the famous Charles Darwin, who then went on to fully develop the theory and bringing in the terms of things like natural selection and acquiring of characteristics through Lamarck's theory as well, which we knew not to be true. Now, in the second part, we talked about neo-Darwinism. So neo comes from I think it's the Greek for new. So it's a new kind of Darwinism. And this took Charles Darwin's theory of natural selection. He agreed with that. But he had to explain how new characteristics, how new genes were formed, and how new species came into existence. And it said it does that through genetic mutation. Okay, so what we're going to do in this episode is we're just going to have a look at natural selection. And we're just going to have a look at a few issues of natural selection, about why that actually isn't as coherent and clear as people make it out to be, that these two processes lead to new species coming and evolving over time. Now, before we go into it, just a reminder of what natural selection is. Natural selection is the idea that when a species is in an environment, okay, the environment, whatever the environment is, that chooses the characteristics in the species which will allow it to thrive. So, for example, if we take the Sahara, if we take kind of like Africa with giraffes, and where the savannah maybe, where you have tall trees, okay, with long branches and tall branches, so the giraffes have to stretch their necks. That's natural selection, because the environment is selecting the characteristic of a long neck through having tall trees. Okay, so let's go into that. Okay, so we'll start off one by one. So look here. Problems with natural selection and random mutation. Okay, but today we'll just do natural selection. So number one, natural selection in S, I'll read it and I'll explain it as we go along, by itself could not cause another species to arise. It would kill off the less favourable, but that is it. So what that means is that natural selection, okay, let's put it that way, let's talk about the giraffe, okay. When you have those tall trees with those tall branches, okay, and the leaves are very, very far up, so you have these giraffes, okay, you have these giraffes, okay, and they have their long necks though, okay, so you have these tall giraffes, okay, so long necks, and you have these really long trees, okay, and they have branches really high up with their leaves. Okay, this is natural selection, where the leaves are really at the top. It's the environment choosing the characteristic for long neck in giraffes. All that would do is any giraffes who are short, okay, any short giraffes that we have here, okay, all it would mean is that these giraffes can't eat. It would mean that these giraffes get killed off. That process of natural selection, there is no kind of understanding and no kind of intrinsic explanation of why natural selection would cause a new species. So I hope that makes sense. All natural selection would do with the trees and the leaves being tall is kill off the ones which don't have small necks. It doesn't make giraffes with long necks, if that makes sense. Yeah? So just because you have natural selection doesn't mean that you have a new species. Darwin actually said in his book, The Origin of Species, okay, so he's actually written a book. It's called The Origin of Species. Okay? And anyone who's interested. It's a difficult book to read. You got to remember this man was writing in the 1800s. It's quite a thick book, a long book, but it's a very interesting book if you do want to read it. Darwin said natural selection can do nothing until favourable individual differences or variations occur. So Darwin actually admitted this. Yeah. So look, he said can do nothing until favourable characteristics, favourable individual differences, or variations occur. Darwin's saying that look, natural selection can't do anything unless there are some differences. Okay, some differences occur. So this is something else he's talking about, where differences occur in individuals, or some kind of variation occurs in the species. Okay, so either you have differences in the species, which occurs through some other method, or so that's individual. So here, where he talks about it in the first part, he's talking about individual differences which occur from beforehand. Okay, so he's saying either that can happen or variations. So number 2 here, where he's talking about variations, and when he talks about variations, he's talking about changes which happen at the present time. Okay, and he's saying if none of those happen, okay, natural selection can't do anything. I.e., he's buying into the theory, and he's telling us as well that natural selection can't do anything by itself. Okay, there's a presupposition, so there's an idea behind all of this, behind natural selection, that there is a struggle for survival in the world. Darwin got this idea from Thomas Malthus, who said that population grows geometrically but food arithmetically. So what this means is Thomas Malthus was a guy who basically postulated and said that, let me put Thomas Malthus down here actually before we come back. So Malthus said that there's a competition in the world, so there's competition in the world naturally, and that we're all fighting for survival. Okay, and what that statement means that food is going up, population grows geometrically. So what this means is where he says population grows geometrically but food arithmetically. Is anyone who studied at college will know that geometrically means that it goes up in a kind of linear. So for example 1, 2, 3, 4, that's going up geometrically because you have a linear kind of that's geometrically because you're having a kind of linear increase, whereas something like 1, 4, 9, 16, that's a geometric because it's not linear, because here you're timesing by 4, you know, here it's a different times, here it's a different times, and obviously we know these are square numbers. So what he's saying is, if I was to draw it on a graph just to make it more easily, he's saying that if food increases like this, okay, so this is food in the environment, it is saying the number of animals, okay, increase like this. Okay, so it says what you always have is you have competition, okay, because you always have more animals than food. Yeah, you always have more animals than food, they're saying. That's what Thomas Malthus said. But this isn't, to be honest, always the case. Okay, there was a famous scientist called A.D. Bradshaw. Okay, and A.D. Bradshaw said, okay, he observed plants that limit their reproduction based on the density of planting. So basically what this means is that, let's imagine you plant a lot of plants in one area, and more really than there naturally would be. Plants actually limit their reproduction naturally and don't reproduce as much because they realise that they won't be able to grow, and there's a lot of people competing for food and water. So that doesn't really show what Thomas Malthus was saying. Bees, aphids, ants, etc. self-sacrifice themselves in fights to protect colonies from attack. Yeah. So this kind of also goes against the presupposition of natural selection, where it says that it's survival of the fittest. If you remember, we talked about that, where only the best survive. Where you have people who self-sacrifice. According to natural selection, people shouldn't be self-sacrificing, especially ones who are at the top. You have sometimes top bees and top aphids. The strongest bees, the strongest aphids, the strongest ants will sacrifice themselves. Whereas according to evolution, the strongest people should survive. So that kind of goes against that idea as well. And then interestingly, bacteria have shown, this was a study by the University of California, okay, that bacteria have shown to kill themselves to save the colony when infected by viruses or bacteriophages. Okay? Again, this is the idea that, it talks about, natural selection, and also Thomas Malthus saying that, kind of there's competition all the time and people are killing each other off and only the best survive. Well, again, you see bacteria not showing that, where they will kill themselves for the betterment of other people. So this was just a few points that we made about natural selection, where, yeah, natural selection definitely causes things and organisms to die. It does kind of select people in a way that's not really an issue here. That when you have these tall branches, when we talked about the giraffes here, okay, we totally get that some giraffes die and some giraffes live on. That's totally fine. But there is no proof and no evidence out there that natural selection causes a new species to be made. Because that's what evolution, that's what neo-Darwinists and Darwinists or evolutionists are saying. Yeah, when we talk about evolution, we talk about Darwinism. That's what evolutionists are saying. Yeah, they're saying that new species are made. We haven't seen that. Yeah, natural selection cannot cause new species to be made. So I hope that makes sense. Obviously, any questions, let me know in the comments below. Next episode, inshallah, we'll look at genetic mutation, and I think this is much more important because genetic mutation is really the focal point of how they talk about and how evolutionists talk about how evolution occurs and how new species occur. So we'll have a look at that next time, inshallah. Okay, Jazakallah for your time. Any questions, again, just let me know in the comments below. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.